What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Hey, question for you, and switch the chat thing to everyone so we can all see your brilliance. If you have questions as we go here, what is when you think about conversations, uncomfortable, difficult conversations you have in the workplace? What is the most dreaded, difficult conversation you can imagine having at work?
Oh, that's easy for me.
What kind of conversation
I'm
would
typing it in the.
frighten you the most?
I'm typing it into the.
Bad breath, body odor. So yeah, Jennifer, body odor. Going back 30 years when I worked in this organization, a friend of mine and she and I drew straws to see who would have to have the conversation with somebody about their body odor. What kind of pizza was it? Oh, body odor. That's a very yeah.
It's very prevalent, and I don't. Now that we bring it up, I can actually smell you through the webinar there.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes sense. Yeah. Huh. We should do it. We should.
You know what? You know what? Like on your birthday, when I gave you deodorant and soaps and stuff. Like, did you read into that at all, or no?
No.
Okay.
I just thought you were being, nice, but nice. We should maybe dedicate a whole session to body odor.
That's right.
Such a hot
Apparently,
topic issue. A hot topic issue. Hey, everybody, welcome. So it is September 17th, 2025. My name is Michael Kerr, coming to you from the Canadian Rockies, where I typically I speak and train and write about. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. Workplace culture, leadership, and humor in the workplace. And today, before we introduce the brilliant Sanjay, is official Table Shuffleboard Day, Monte Cristo Day, Professional House Cleaner Day, Time's Up Day, Responsible Dog Owner Day, Ask an Atheist Day, and International Country Music Day. Do you listen to country music, Sanjay?
with earplugs, yes.
With earplugs. Sanjay, tell us a little bit about you.
But Monte, I think everyone should go and watch The Count of Monte Cristo. But if it's September 17th, you know what it is? It's actually the half birthday of St. Patrick's Day. September 17th. No,
it's the half, but yeah. Okay.
No, okay.
Yeah.
My name is Sanjay Nath. I am a speaker and author, focusing my talents on leadership and performance in the workplace. Like Michael Kerr, I've been doing this just slightly over 30 years. In fact, in 3 months, it'll be my 31st anniversary.
Wow, 31th. Wow.
31th.
And what was that word?
What's cool is my anniversary will match my IQ. Sorry, what were you saying?
That is cool. Talents. The word you used was talents. I just wanted to.
I did.
Talents.
Yeah. With an asterisk. There's a footnote.
Yes. Hey, welcome everybody. Before we dive in, so the topic today is
body odor, is the use of the letter U in Canadian spellings.
Yeah. Yes. The reason we asked that conversation question is that's the topic for today, is how do you create a culture of conversations, if you will, the power of conversations to build a better culture, why they matter, how to have good conversations, and different types of conversations that we should be thinking about in the workplace. This is a hugely popular topic that I like to speak about because I honestly believe the quality of the conversations you have in your workplace will largely determine how successful your team is, how successful your organization is. The quality of your conversations will determine how rocking your culture is. But before we get into this topic, we just wanted to take a few minutes. We want to do this every now and then, just to see if you are beloved, adored regulars that show up here every other Wednesday, and we thank you for that. If you have any pressing questions, we're going to 2 questions that you have that we could on any topic related to workplace culture.
What do we used to call this? The brain trust. We used to do episodes of this where people just ask questions, and we would try to pretend like you know answers.
You just want to ask. That could be a really short question, whatever, just whatever you want. 2 questions, first 2 questions. It can be a super quick, fast question, whatever.
I have a really long question. If you don't want to ask, it would be asking around your follicle routine. But
my follicle routine has fallen apart because of my dad.
There you go.
Can't handle the fanciness. Nothing. No questions. Nothing. No question. Any questions? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, that's a great question. We'll get into that in the body of the topic, but I love that. Yes. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah. What do people tranquilizers do? When in doubt, the answer is tranquilizers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How to engage your leadership to be engaging.
Again, tranquilizers.
Tranquilize. So I'm curious to know what that actually means to you. What does that look like? Like, what do you mean when you say how do you normalize difficult conversation? Okay, yeah, we'll get into that. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess what we didn't qualify was when we were opening up the question, we weren't necessarily talking about questions about conversations. We were talking about in general, and then we were going to launch to that. But people have great questions about conversations, so maybe we just jump right into that.
But I do want to let's have we've got one interesting question.
Engaging.
How do you engage your leadership to be engaging? So you're not finding your leadership to be very engaging? And I would love to know what you mean by that. There we go. Doesn't really prioritize engagements, ideas, or how-tos to get them to lead from top down. Okay. Sanjay, what do you think? That's an important question.
What do I think? I think first question I would be asking, if I'm in that situation, I'm being very pragmatic about it, not theoretical, but very pragmatic. First thing I go is, are they learnable? Are they teachable? Are they open? Because if they're not open, I'm going over to Indeed and I'm looking for a new job.
Are they coachable?
Are they coachable?
Right.
So that would be the first thing. And then if they are coachable, they are open, then I mean, it actually dovetails into our conversation for today, which is it's about communication. It's about expressing it to them in terms that are important to them. So, for example, if you have a leadership that is obsessed with the bottom line, if you can explain to them credibly that by getting people more engaged, it increases their bottom line, they're more likely to do it, as opposed to, this is the right way to do it. This is what all the cool kids are doing it. Because they don't care about what the right way is, what other people are doing, they're not going to play ball. So you have to find that internal driver. And I'm using bottom line because it's a simple one, but it could also be recognition. It could also be culture. It could also be legacy. So maybe you have someone as a leader who is healthy or unhealthily obsessed with legacy. And you go, hey, you want to be the best, leave the best legacy you possibly could, engage people because this is what it's done here. So I think really what it comes down to is finding the driver that specific to that leadership team or individuals and hit them up one at a time, and then explain to them or basically create a really good argument as to how being more engaged is going to help them fulfill that particular bit.
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying is you've got to sell them of the importance of this, right?
But
and that's what that's why I think a lot of us.
But sell it in their currency. Don't sell it in your currency. Don't sell it in statistics. It has to be personalized to them. Otherwise, they're not going to buy in, or they'll buy in superficially, and you won't have sustainability.
And the old what's in it for them is that, hey, your life is going to be easier. You're going to have less stress. You're going to be happier at work if you think about your workplace culture and think about how you're interacting with employees and engaging employees. You'll be more engaged if you start engaging employees and think about this as a priority, in addition to all the other ways that we can sell this as an absolutely key aspect of leadership. But I mean, yeah, it comes down to conversations. It comes down to selling them of the benefits of this. But I was going to ask, how do you so you said, well, it depends whether they're learnable or coachable, right? How do you know if somebody's coachable or not, Sanjay?
Well, experience, history. I mean, that would be where I'd start with. In the past, have they done that? Are they tunnel vision? Are they stubborn? And don't get me wrong, stubborn is a great trait in the right places. But if you're always stubborn and it's always got to be your way, then that's not very coachable. It's not very open. If you've had past experiences and seeing the person bend, I'd be doing mental inventory, going, oh, why did they change the last time? What is it that was different or what was unique? And so that would be the first thing. And if you're brand new there, I would be asking people, have you ever seen this individual in the past change their mind or be open or be persuaded, or what's the lay of the land?
Just even how open are they to hearing new ideas, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I would say that I always fall back on is just don't wait for your leadership team. Start doing whatever you can yourself in your little piece of the corner of your workplace. Be the model, be the lead, be the example, be the culture champion that energizes people around you. And hopefully through your example, you will create a little bit of a domino effect. You will influence people around you to want to get on board.
If I can quote Michael Jackson, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. In fact, if I can use this story, no, don't sing it. No, no, no. Get your hand away from your crotch. Stop the Michael Jackson. Anyways, there's a story about Gandhi. So this mother brings a child to Gandhi and says, she waits hours to see him, and she brings him up to him and she says, "My son eats too much sugar. Tell him he eats too much sugar." And he looks at her and he says, "Come back in 2 weeks." And she's like, "What?" He says, "Come back in 2 weeks." So fine, she goes and comes back 2 weeks later, waits in line again, finally sees him. She says, "I'm back here 2 weeks later, telling me he eats too much sugar." Grabs the kid, looks him in the eye and goes, "You eat too much sugar. It's not healthy. Stop." And the kid kind of runs away. And the mother looks at him and goes, Why didn't you tell him that 2 weeks ago?" And he said, "Well, 2 weeks ago, I ate too much sugar." So it's that idea of leading the way and walking the walk and having integrity and all that kind of stuff. So if there's a small thing you can do, start doing it now, because maybe the leadership doesn't see you, but one of your coworkers does, or one of your supervisors or subordinates does, and then they start acting differently as a result. All right.
Yeah.
Lead by example.
That is, yeah. All right. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Well, it is, and it does. I think it boils down to our topic. So let's dive into it, because it is about having conversations and having sometimes those challenging conversations where we have to manage up, where we have to coach our boss, our leaders, the people above us, and have these conversations and give them feedback and suggestions and ideas, and be courageous enough to do that. So let's start with just why should we prioritize conversations in the workplace? And I said it before. I made that sweeping statement, which I stand by, and I talk about a lot in my last book, Small Moments, Big Outcomes, that conversations are a key driver of success in any workplace culture. And you look at a culture, one that comes to mind when I think about conversations is Netflix. They very much have a culture of conversations where it is normalized, to go back to somebody's question, to have feedback conversations just in the moment. So Sanjay and I could walk out of a meeting and walking down the hallway, and he and I have an opportunity to have a conversation from that end of that meeting back to the desk, where it could be everything from, "Hey, Sanjay, is it okay if I give you a little feedback on the presentation you gave in the meeting?" And because they've normalized it, Sanjay is going to go, "Yes, it's my job to listen to your feedback because they told me it's my job to listen to and be open to any feedback." So they very much have normalized it. And sorry, Sanjay, just this last thought on just the importance of this. One of the things I always say to my audience is have more conversations and less meetings. Right? I think the more actual, genuine, real conversations you can have with the people around you, the better your culture is going to be.
And conversations has an inherent organic approach to it. It's not a structured tick the box. I've said this for years. When I go to speaking at events, I go, you need speakers, you need a formal agenda. However, the most elaborate, intimate, successful conversations are when two people are standing in the buffet line, and you end up meeting someone from across the country, and you're like, "Oh, you do that? I do that. I thought I was the only worst person in the world that did that." And you have those informal conversations. And as much as we can, we want to do, there are certain things obviously we can specifically do to encourage more, to engage. Again, it's not a script. It's not a walk in, flick your hair, tilt to the right, and say the following words. It's not. With that said, though, again, I believe it was Google who at one point rearranged their headquarters to put the cafeteria in the middle of the workplace, so that people had to cut through to go from one place to another, to encourage those water cooler conversations. And
Right.
Sometimes they are very informal and completely unrelated to work, but still very important to work, because you're talking about the results of the baseball game, the basketball game, the hockey game, whatever it is. But it's those connections and how we find our tribe within the tribe.
Yeah, you build trust that way. And I know Steve Jobs did that when he took over for Pixar Studios, and he rearranged the design with the washrooms involved, I think, so that to create serendipitous opportunities for people from different departments to have conversations, so they could cross-fertilize ideas, which is so important. And as you say, we want to create a culture that is relaxed enough, I think, right? Where it's got this
Feng Shui.
yeah, well, no, I'm thinking, just the vibe where it's easy and comfortable for people to talk to anybody, right? It's all about approachability. It's all about just creating that culture that is conducive to people just having conversations all the time. And as you said, a lot of these are just going to be organic, and that's great, and that's what we want. However, that doesn't preclude, and we'll get to that, having some frameworks for some good conversations. So we want to talk about some different types of conversations that you could and should be thinking about, but also just some how-tos for having good conversations. And right away, so it's interesting that we talked about just the word conversations, and right away people went to difficult conversations, and we often put
Well,
that
that's because we did it. We asked them a question. Don't blame the people, blame you.
No, I'm not blaming the people. I'm saying this is an interesting insight, and this is what I see all the time, right? Because a conversation doesn't necessarily have to be, we can think of all sorts of it. Could be a good news. In fact, this is a kind of conversation that I think especially leaders should do. You want to score points. You call an employee into your office just to give them good news, just to have this conversation, to say, hey, I just wanted to take a few minutes. You just were absolutely brilliant last week working on that project, and I know you busted your tail, and we are all so proud of you, and thank you for your effort, right? Think of how impactful that can have, to have just a dedicated good news, thank you, appreciation kind of conversation. That employee is going to go home and tell their family. They're going to feel so great. And it's one of those, I think about this, and I feel like I've told this story here, so apologies if I have, but it's like when my wife and I had this fabulous seafood dinner in Vancouver many years ago, and the next day we walked by it, and I went in and asked for the manager. Now, what is that manager thinking? And you could see on the look on his face, oh God, there's customers from last night. They want to speak to the manager. They're here to gripe. They've got a complaint. Oh, great. But it was the opposite. I wanted to make a point of going in there just to rave about the server that we had, because she was one of the best servers I had seen in my life. And he was so thrilled. He was so happy. And this woman had only been there for 2 weeks. So he was thrilled to get this feedback. So the power of just having a good news, appreciation, recognition as a discrete conversation is immense. However,
when I was probably in the 90s, I think I read Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute Manager, and I'm pretty sure it's where the idea came from. But he said in there, catch your employees doing something right.
Right. Yeah.
And I've always taken that to heart whenever I've worked with teams, or even as a father. I'll call my kids into the room and I'll be like, get in here. And I use the same tone if I'm going to give them poop or if I'm going to give them a prize. And so I want them to know that someone calls on you, it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's the idea that we're going to start a conversation.
Right. Totally. And as Fritz says here, right, we need to create a culture of appreciation. So again, modeling this, the more you start doing this as a leader, word is going to spread. But we want to implicitly tell people, hey, reach out to your colleagues when they've done something great. Take the time to just be in the moment, be present, and appreciate them, recognize them, thank them with a heartfelt, genuine, sincere conversation.
The other really important thing about conversations is having a conversation, like a solid conversation with someone creates a connection. And the more connections we make, especially in the workplace, the more people feel welcome, the more they feel psychologically safe. And so we want to encourage them. And again, it doesn't even necessarily need to be work related. Obviously, that is part of it, but it's not the only part of it. Like, again, you're having a side conversation about news, about politics, about sports. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as, again, you guys are on the same page. It's appropriate. You're not too one-sided. But again, it's making those connections, and we do that through conversation. The other thing,
how you build trust, right?
Yeah, and I want to point out, this is a conversation. Although we're going to give some ideas, frameworks, and structures, there's no particular one way of doing it. For some people, they can sit in a room and grunt back and forth and then leave and go, good conversation. Yeah, really felt that one. So it's not a matter of you have to do it in a certain form, but it needs to be in the form of which both participants or all the participants feel heard and feel they have an opportunity to express. And that's what a good conversation is.
Yeah, not a monologue. It's an actual conversation. And you know what I love? We're obviously using the word conversation a lot, but I recommend using the word conversation for a lot of things. So rather than saying, you know, one of the conversations we can get into is, you know, a what will keep you here conversation, a stay interview, as some folks call it, rather than a exit interview, because it's too late. They've left the building. Elvis has left the building. So once a year, having a conversation, hey, a check-in conversation about how your career is going. How are your long-term goals? What will keep you here? But call it a conversation, not a meeting. When you're giving feedback to a coworker or somebody, don't necessarily use the word feedback even. Just say, I want to have a because there's something a little gentler about the word conversation, and it frames things differently. Even for meetings, I like the idea of saying, rather than having a meeting about this, let's go ahead, we're going to have a conversation. Let's have a really good, rich conversation about these topics. And just normalizing using that term. But let's get into because this is what everyone wants to talk about, right? You've got a difficult conversation, you've got a challenging conversation. Let's talk about those, because those are the ones that keep us up at night. Those are the ones we put off for months. In my book, The Jerk-Free Workplace, I actually have a stat that's something like, I think it's 11% of employees, this seems ridiculous, actually left a job in order to avoid having a difficult conversation with somebody. It's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to quit rather than tell Joe.
How many people, and I'm sure everyone on this call can relate to this, how many people know someone who stayed in a relationship, a romantic relationship, significantly longer than they should have because they didn't want to have a difficult conversation?
Sure. Right. Yeah, we put off things. So right away. So a lot of this stuff is mindset. So I'm going to suggest this right away. Right out of the gate, step number one, stop thinking of them as difficult conversations. Get that out of your brain. Stop thinking of them as a challenging conversation. Right away, you're setting yourself up for discomfort. You're creating a situation in your own mind where you're going to lose sleep over this. You're thinking, oh, I have to have this difficult conversation. Instead,
and one of the ways, I was going to say, one of the ways to do that is, rather than focus on the difficultiness of the conversation, hey, you smell, think about the potential outcome that you hope to achieve. Oh my goodness, Michael's going to shower. My olfactory nerves will thank me for it. So a lot of times, like, we get stuck in, oh, I don't want to do this, and our shoulders are up here. But think about once that's out in the open, how much we get to kind of drop our shoulders. In fact, I was just chatting with a friend recently who is doing a contract with someone and wanted to scale it back from 2 days to 1 day, but felt really awkward to them, like they were letting this person down and blah, blah, blah. And I was trying to coach him through it and saying, look, you don't even know what's happening on the other end. And eventually went to have the conversation, and the contractee was very grateful because they wanted to actually pare it down too. So sometimes those difficult conversations you think are going to be so horrible, actually the other person is so grateful for you having them. And
you've imagined it, right? You've imagined it. You don't know the outcome. So that speaks to a number of things, right? Coming at it from a place of curiosity, coming at it from a place of open-mindedness, from a partner mindset, and excuse me,
coughing mindset.
Remnants are still here, and thinking of it as doing that person a favor. That it is, you know, to quote Brené Brown, honesty, to paraphrase her, because I'm not going to get it right, but being kind is being honest, or being honest is being kind. And that's what you do. You are helping the person in the long run. So think of that worst case scenario conversation, the BO conversation. Wouldn't you? Like, I would be mortified to know that people have been talking about me, that I've had a BO issue for the last 6 months and nobody told me. Wouldn't all of us on this call prefer that somebody, you know, hopefully somebody we trust, took us aside and said, you know,
it's been longer than 6 months.
And it's been longer than 6. Yeah. Like how many times, and I'm sure we all have examples of this, where somebody has told us something, maybe an uncomfortable truth, where we've got, oh, why didn't you tell me this 2 years ago? Oh,
yeah.
And so
there's never a right time, and good and bad news doesn't get better with time.
Yeah.
If you
No.
hope it goes away, it doesn't. It usually
So
gets
so
worse.
that's the other mindset. It's about just do it. Don't put it off. Rip the Band-Aid off, because all that does is it grows in your mind. It will keep, you're going to lose more
And
sleep
how you do
to
it,
this. It's going to
how you
grow
do
and
it should
grow.
be consistent with your personality. So you used the Brene Brown quote. Simon Cowell has the same philosophy. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just like, he's much more abrasive and blunt, and he does it for theatrics as well. But the core of what both of them are doing is the same thing. And one plays out much better in one particular audience than the other. There's not a right or wrong way of doing it. There are different ways of doing it. And it has to be consistent with your personality. Because if Simon Cowell tried to do the Brene Brown approach, or the Brene Brown tried to do the Simon Cowell approach, both don't work. So
No. Yeah. So again, a lot of this starts with mindset. If you just adopt the mindset, no, this is not a challenging, a difficult conversation. Maybe it's an honest conversation you're going to have, but think of it as this is going to be a necessary conversation, a helpful, a supportive conversation, because you are going into this conversation to support the other person, no matter what the issue is. In the long run, you need to do this. You're going to help them, and set yourself up for success. And on that note, set them up for success. So while I think of this too, I want to touch on this point, because thinking back even to the good news conversation story, one of the worst things I think we can do sometimes, especially if we're in a position of power over somebody, is to fire off an email, send a text message, and say, hey, I really need to speak to you, Sanjay, at 3:00 this afternoon. Like, see me in my office. Now, what is Sanjay thinking for the next 4 hours? Oh crap, I've screwed up. What did I do? I'm in trouble. I didn't, the tone seemed kind of abrupt and curt. So wow. And Sanjay's going to stew and stew and stew. And then he shows up at my office, and I'm, hey, Sanjay, just wanted to thank you for that. And you're like, oh, I've been going crazy for the last 4 hours.
In the meantime, the ulcer is already formed, right?
The ulcer is already formed. Yes.
But yeah, for sure. And that, again, the core of conversations is about connecting. It's about communicating. It's about getting out our messages, and some of them are joyous and celebratory, and others are challenging and feedback related. We need the full spectrum.
Anna makes a great point here, right? And this goes back to the idea of why we have to normalize these. It's just like this idea of, and why so many businesses are getting away from the performance reviews, the annual performance reviews, because they cause a lot of stress. Yeah. They don't prove to work very well. They're very ineffective for the most part. There's a few companies that do them very well, but what happens time and time again, to Anna's point, is that people find out about something that they've been doing all year, and that's ridiculous. That's why companies like Netflix have normalized feedback conversations and said this is part of your job on day one, to give and be open to getting feedback from everyone and to contribute ideas that will be successful for a company. So conversations can happen anywhere and everywhere, and you don't have to wait for them. And for God's sakes, don't wait a year to tell somebody. Like, why would we do that? It's insane.
And Anna's other point is this idea of, let's look at the action rather than the person, right?
Yes.
And again, one of the ways I heard it years ago was fix the problem, not the blame.
Yeah.
And when we personalize it and we make it about you, and again, sometimes it needs to be a bit about you. If we go the BO problem, that is, it's specifically about the individual. But a lot of times too, hey, this project didn't go the way we wanted it to. It's not your fault. But if there are certain actions you could have taken that could have changed the outcome, what could you have done differently? What could your boss have done differently? What could your coworkers have done? What could have I done differently? And again, this idea of role modeling, when you're giving out feedback, you got to be able to take it. And sometimes too, that's one of the easiest ways to do it, is use yourself as a guinea pig, or use someone who's has more formal authority, and use them as an example of, hey, they're open to the feedback. Hey, they're going to learn from this. Hey, they're going to process it. They're going to use it to move forward.
Yeah. So on that note, Netflix actually models that. Senior leaders will debate one another over ideas in front of employees to model what a healthy, good difference of opinion looks like, where we're focused on the ideas and the outcome, not the personalities. And so they model that. So everybody starts to learn that. And Patty, yes, very good point. Certain conversations, like, praise conversations, great to hold in public. But if it's not that, then of course there's all sorts of ones that need to be private conversations. And
and also what Amy's saying too, this idea of ongoing. It's not a big surprise. And oh yeah, do you remember 18 months ago when you gave me a grumpy look when you walked in? And harboring off the list. Let's deal with it in the moment. It doesn't mean we can't revisit it, or we go, hey, 18 months ago you gave me a dirty look, and I've noticed significant progress in that opportunity. But catching it in the moment, that's when we get our biggest learning. If you're trying to teach someone a sport, they're swinging a tennis racket, they're doing it all wrong. You don't wait till the end of the tournament and go, oh, in game 2, about 13 minutes into the match, you twisted your ankle, or your wrist was all wrong. It's like, give me the immediate feedback in the moment, because that's most likely for me to correct and learn from it.
Totally. Yes. Here's another mindset thing that I know has helped me really, really a lot. Helped me a lot. And it is simply this: never think of these conversations, these honest conversations, as a one-time event. This goes back to normalizing things too, because here's what happens. If you think of it as a one-time event, it becomes the Super Bowl of conversations in your mind. It becomes this thing. I have to have this one conversation with Susan about such and such. No, never look at it this way. Look at it as the start of a series of conversations. Always do a check-in conversation, at least one, after you have a conversation like this with somebody. Always. Because for a number of reasons, because people are gonna, like, we know people don't think of the perfect response or articulate their ideas in the moment very clearly. But what happens, you go away after a conversation, then you start thinking, well, why didn't I tell them this, or why didn't I ask this question, or why didn't I, right? And so people need time to ruminate, for emotions maybe to level down a little bit, for people to really think about it and absorb it. And then scheduling a follow-up conversation also sends the message, you are here to support that person. I'm a partner with you in this. So I'm not putting this all on you. I want to help you with this. Let's work together, find a solution. Let's schedule a follow-up conversation. But just the fact of looking at it that way, again, from a mindset thing, is really, really powerful, because it takes the pressure off of this one conversation. You're not going to maybe get everything right if it's a really, really, I don't want to use the word challenging conversation, but.
So to Fritz's point in there, he's saying, what we're saying is basically coaching, and you're absolutely right. A good conversation is coaching. And as part of that, we've been focusing a lot here on this idea of expressing and sharing and having those conversations. But just as important is the listening piece, is giving some feedback, or giving a topic to someone, but it's volleying back and forth there, because especially too, if people feel threatened, if people feel attacked, what are they going to do? They're going to defend themselves. That is a very normal human response. And how we listen to that and how we react to that creates a level of psychological safety. And what's going to happen is either next time they're going to shut down and they're going to avoid the conversation, or they're going to be more open. So it's one thing to bring up a topic and state your points and rip off the Band-Aid, but just as important is the follow-up piece and how you react. Oh, I'm not listening to you, or that you're entitled to your wrong opinion. Let's talk.
It goes back to that, coming in from a place of curiosity. Like, I wonder what's really going on with Bob, because this is not typical of Bob behavior. So I'm going to be open-minded, and coming in from a place of, I'm going to learn something as well. So I'm not here just to, because again, it's a conversation, not a monologue. So I'm not going to just sit here and blah, 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 blah to this person. I'm going to ask smart questions. I'm going to ask follow-up questions. I'm going to demonstrate that I'm in this with you, adopt a partnership mindset, and let's work on a solution together and make the person feel supported and valued and appreciated, no matter how challenging the issue is. And again, focusing on, like Fritz is saying, on the coaching kind of language, which means things like, using I personal statements. I feel like, Sanjay, when you make jokes about me on every other Wednesday, I feel like you don't value me as a human, and it hurts my feelings. Now, instead of saying,
should I switch to every other Thursday then?
Yeah, you should. Instead of saying, Sanjay, you're a big jerk, right? Sanjay gets his back
Although,
up. I've labeled him.
although factually may be correct, it's just
Factually
not
true,
appropriate.
but
Yeah.
you don't want to say that. So it's pretty hard to argue with somebody's feelings, somebody's perceptions. I feel this is how I feel. No, this is how I feel, Sanjay. Like you can't really debate that. Focus on the facts. Focus on the objectable facts. And if you focus on facts, that's a really good way to lower emotions too, because facts, hopefully, for the most part, you can agree on that this happened. So rather than you treated that customer horribly. I noticed that you raised your voice very loudly with that customer.
And you
So I'm
smashed his head against the counter.
Yes, what was going on there? I noticed you slammed the door rather than saying, why are you asking an accusatory question? So just thinking about the language that we use, asking good questions, being thoughtful and listening, and making sure you have space in your conversation, right? So you don't rush it. Meeting in a neutral place, and we haven't talked about this either, but the location, these things can have a huge factor. Meeting in a neutral, relaxed place where there's no distractions, cell phones are off, there's nothing to distract you, where you can have a focused, comfortable conversation.
Yeah. We're going back to this idea of you're saying, when you slam the door, this is how I feel. It hurts my ears, whatever. And from a legal perspective, and I don't remember which it is, but they have something called the subjective view and the objective view. And the subjective view is, if you say, I feel scared when you bark like a dog, you can't argue that's how I feel. Mm-hmm. But that from a legal standpoint, they cannot do that. But from a objective standpoint, they go, okay, when I bark like a dog, would a reasonable person be expected to feel the same way? And so the reason I'm bringing this up is when you're having a conversation, what you kind of want to do is in the back of your head by default kind of go, what would be a reasonable expectation of someone's reaction? Like, right. What would a normal person be? Now, if you're having that conversation and you're barking like a dog and the person's very frightened, well, you need to change your default and you need to course correct in that conversation. I mean, that's a very important piece there. Is if you're having a conversation and it's not going the way you want and the reaction from the person is very yucky, then what we need to do is, again, we need to shift our path so that we're speaking the language of the person so that we can get that message across. Because ultimately that's the goal here, is to get the message across and have people feel empowered by it, not deflated.
Yeah, totally. And again, we do that by demonstrating that we are partnering with them. We're in with them so that they don't feel abandoned, right? Like you've got a problem, you've got an issue. I'm going to tell you about it. Go away and fix it, right? No, yeah. I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. So let me know what you need. And what is support? And that's a great question to ask, right? What kind of support would help you with this? And what does support look like?
Yeah. Right. And by the way, sometimes too, rather than guessing, asking is a very powerful way.
Yes.
What would be helpful? Or my kid said to me the other day, and he's 13, and he said, Dad, what would it take for me to do for you to get this for me? Right? But again, it was rather than gimme. Right. When we take that frame of mind of what's important to you, and if you're not sure, ask.
Yeah. What would it take for me to get you in this car today?
I was exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Larry from Three's Company.
What do you need? Hey, and by the way, too, I'm just looking at a few notes here, and I was thinking, and this is what I recommend all the time. People when I coach leaders on all this stuff, I say, don't be sometimes they ask it, is it okay to take notes? To bring notes? Of course it's okay to bring notes. Of course it is. Like if you otherwise you're going to forget things, and bringing some notes and just telling the person, hey, I wrote down a few notes because I just wanted to remember everything. I don't want to forget anything. So I just got a few notes. Hope you don't mind. I just want to refer to them. Right. So there's nothing, it's not like you're cheating or anything. And it doesn't necessarily make it less authentic. You can still come across very genuine and authentic and heartfelt, but bring notes, refer to notes. So that's another kind of mindset piece to ease the stress off of you. Do your homework. Think of questions you want to ask this person. Think of ways that you might frame some of your concerns that are going to be in a supportive way that's going to be helpful to this person.
The other thing-
And reach out for other people to advice. If you've got people on your team, you don't have to name names. You don't have to talk about specific people, but talk to another leader and say, hey, do you have any suggestions on how you would talk to somebody about X? And you're going to get so much help from the people around you. But I think we forget to do that sometimes.
Yep.
Yep.
I was going to say something now, but I forgot because you were talking too much.
Yeah,
Again.
I know.
This is a difficult conversation, but
it's a very challenging conversation, Sanjay. Like I don't think we should schedule a follow-up on 2 weeks from now.
It sounds pretty good. In fact, we should actually start wrapping.
See what I did there? Hey, so let's very quickly talk about a few frameworks. I've got a whole back. I'm just going to cheat here. I'm going to just blatantly look at my book because I've got a whole whack of frameworks here for different conversations, different frameworks that you can use.
And we've had Anna on a couple of times, and she's offered many as well.
I know. There's so many great ones, but there's everything from, if it's a bit of a contentious issue, just establishing the context and your reference point. So this, number one. So just telling them, hey, here's where I'm coming from with this. And then number two, giving them an opportunity. So how do you see this situation? And then number three, just exploring options together, brainstorming options together. How can we fix this problem? How can we make this better? How can we improve this situation? Asking people, there's a whole whack of things. Here's a great one. I think that I use a lot too. When an employee, when a coworker comes to you with a challenge or an issue, rather than immediately going into advice mode, asking them, taking a step back, and first question, asking them, what do you think you should do? What do you think you should do? And oftentimes they will come up with the answer themselves, and that's going to be the most effective solution.
And by the way, along the same lines of them doing the triage, and I do this with my partner. If she comes and says something to me, I will say, okay, because I have a default, I want to jump into solutions. That is how I operate. So I'll say, am I listening in the solution-focused way or in the empathetic, hold your hand kind of way? And we literally will have that conversation. And sometimes, no, give me solutions, or just shut up and listen. Okay, I can do both, but it's nice to be able to have that conversation.
That's the old one, when somebody comes to you and they're upset and they're venting a colleague and they want to have a conversation with you, just using that framework. Okay, do you need a hug? Do you need a shoulder? Or do you need some advice?
Yeah.
Right? What do you want? Because sometimes
they
don't want your advice right now.
You're speaking too much. We got to wrap this puppy up.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go.
All right. Done. Bye. Go home. Come back.
Done. We're done. So many more we didn't get to.
Well, then talk faster next time.
No,
goodness.
Quit talking next time.
See what I did there? I had a difficult conversation, but I was kind of a jerk about it.
You were.
But that's okay.
I was
true to brand.
Let's schedule a follow-up. When will our follow-up be, Sanjay?
How about October 1st?
That work? The 1st of October?
The 1st of October.
We'll be in autumn. We'll be officially in autumn then.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will.
So, folks, thank you for joining us. We encourage you to come back in 2 weeks, where we will talk about something that we have no idea at this point. But bring everyone. There's a new admission to coming in. Next time you have to bring 100 friends, or else you can't come in.
That would be awesome.
There you go. Yeah, Michael?
Thank you all. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your ideas, your suggestions, your questions, and just your presence. Thank you so much. Have a brilliant rest of the day and week, and have a brilliant next
13
conversation.
days. We'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. Thank you so much.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.